I am a first-year MBA student at MIT Sloan, and I'm here to introduce Nadia Banks, who will be doing her presentation entitled The Future of Sports, Digitization, and Diversity.
So I know when you think of sports and the digitization of sports and then the diversity angle, it kind of sounds like a very broad-ranging topic, but they're actually really tied together to help you give a competitive advantage when you think about diversity in sport. So if you look at it from a very, very high level and you think about, the different types of business models that are coming about, these new companies are really starting to evolve and they're really focusing on what is going to make them successful. It's no longer just about the economic success. It's really also about how they're doing it in an environmental standpoint or how they're socially responsible in the world, and consumers are really starting to pay attention to what companies do, and they're picking brands that they feel very comfortable with. So as a company, you can't just think about how do I make $1 billion. You have to think about these three factors in general. So what does that really look like? And I'm not a big build slide person. So what that looks like is there's really three different areas of business models that are starting to flourish in this new world. If you think about it from a sharing aspect, that's probably one of the most obvious ones when you think of the likes of like Uber or Airbnb. But what you really need to think more is not just Uber or Lyft is changing the transportation industry. What it's doing is it's changing the way maybe even cities start to plan. So if you start to think of a world where people are taking car services instead of potentially buying their own car, then that means that there might be less cars on the road. Or it could also mean that, as where you choose to live, you may no longer need to live in the city that you work in because it's so much easier to get to work. There's also the part about the shared infrastructure. So, this idea of the cloud, more and more people are taking advantage of services like Amazon Web Services, for example, to store all their information in the cloud. A second type of business model that we're starting to look at is this idea of co-creation. So the whole maker movement, everyone can pretty much create the product that they want to create today. It's not just about big traditional companies going off and doing it. You're starting to see startups all over the place create new products. And in the sports world, that's really, really starting to happen today. The automotive industry is also a really good example of co-creation. You're starting to see this whole autonomous car movement take place, and it's not just about the BMWs of the world going off and saying, I'm going to go be successful in this space. It requires finding partners who are successful in this space and complementing what they bring to the table. And then last is this idea of experience. So it's no longer just going and buying coffee beans. It's going off and, you want to have that artisanal coffee experience. You're going to sit down, you're paying for that experience, and it's really important to think about, what is it that your customer wants? What are their goals in life? It's not that they're going to go buy a product, it's they want to do something that's going to make them happier or feel better. So these are the three areas that we're really focused on. But what's really helping make these all more successful is this idea of the technology transformation. And if you think about in 2020, if we've got 50 billion connected devices or 212 billion sensors, that is a lot of data that's being generated. And with all that data, you're going to start to learn so much more about each individual or each company, and you're going to start to get these really, really powerful insights. And as a result of this data transformation, you're starting to see how that can really impact the different industries. So I gave the example of the autonomous car. You're starting to see that in how communication standards take place. So a push into 5G to make sure that your connected device is not just connecting to the internet, but you're also sending back information so you can get those analytics real time on your device quickly. Fashion is a really interesting example too. When you look at what how they started to really embrace the technology landscape. Back in last year in New York during their Fashion Week, they actually streamed through VR a couple of the shows. But obviously, what we're here today is really about sports, and sports is probably one of the biggest industries that's really, really starting to see this technology transformation. And as a result, Intel is completely focused on this space. We're about 4 months into actually having our own business unit dedicated to the sports industry. And when we look at the sports industry, it's how can we power every aspect of the game. So there's so many different facets of the game. You've got, obviously, the easy one, which improving an athlete performance. Then there's the stadiums, all the different technologies that you start to see in a stadium. And if you think about today's world, when you're sitting at a game, you can now order from your phone drinks or merchandise right to your seat. The way that people are watching the game outside of the stadium is also changing. Multiple screens all over the place, whether you're watching it through VR, or even just how you watch replays happen. And then last is, even if you think about it from an officiating standpoint, it's going to be really important to, when you're looking at a replay, to be able to exactly see what took place, not just have a couple views of the position and hope you can derive what happened. So in order for us as Intel to be really successful in this space, we're not looking at it as how do we go off and do this on our own. It's, what our expertise is in technology. We're not going to claim that we're experts in sport. So for us, it's really important to go off and find those partners that are experts in this space to help complement us. And, one of the really big things that we do well and we focus on is how do you build that larger ecosystem together and bring all these partners together. So up here is an example of some of the partnerships that we've announced in the past. But we're obviously growing more and more to that space. But to really talk about what we're here for is the whole idea of diversity in sport. And as part of this new ecosystem, you really need diversity in order to be successful. So diversity is what's going to give you that competitive advantage to win. And it gives you that competitive advantage if you think about it from 3 different areas. One is the way the game is playing is changing. The face of the fan is changing. You're starting to see more diverse fans, and the way they're watching the game is changing. There's so many different ways to start looking at it. And even hiring is changing too. So these are the 3 areas. And when you think about how the game is being played today, there's really this whole idea of one size doesn't fit all anymore. When you look at athletes, they're not just all one person that's all the same, that's going to train the exact same. Each person is going to be optimized to train differently. An example would be with the German national soccer team and Exos, when they were training before they won the World Cup in 2014. They gave each athlete an individual training plan, based on what they were capable of. And the result was obviously they won the World Cup, but they were also said to have an extra player on the field because they were conditioned so well. You're going to start to see that sort of technology go even more personalized. The way that the game tactically is played, not just on the human performance angle, but on the tactical side, is also changing too. If you know for a fact that you're good at shooting threes from the baseline, then you can start to make sure that your coach gives you plays that give you the ball on that side. Or you can start to learn that if you dribble and shoot, your shot percentage is a lot lower. But if you catch and shoot and it's higher, then you can train to start playing that way. Gear is changing too. It's not just about one wearable for everyone. You just have to start to think about just what type of sport you're playing, but also, different genders. I mean, women and men both have different areas in which they're more prone to injury. So it's important to be very focused on what's meant for that individual person. And then coaching is the other area that you're starting to see a lot of change. I think the Spurs did it, first when they started benching their star players in order to make sure that they didn't get injured. You're starting to see that happen more and more, and it's starting to become part of the strategy. But also, if you think about the quality of the product too, as a league, you may not want to see the star players get benched. So it's really important to start really diving deeper into when is a person really, really fatigued, and when is the right time to bench, and what is that optimal period that they should be out for. So the way that we're looking at it at Intel is pretty much it's an end-to-end solution. There's all this data that's being generated and all the data that you collect, but then but so what? What do you do with all that data after a while? And that's where this idea of artificial intelligence can really take hold and start to provide you insights that are going to help you make more informed decisions. Whether you're looking at the risk of injury analysis, whether you're getting real-time data from the game, how you look at recruiting and all that, you're going to start to see a lot more focused and insightful decisions. And a good example with recruiting is if you can really understand what makes one player special, what is that secret sauce that makes them better, how do you start looking for that in other players as they're going up through the academies or going up through, through college? Artificial intelligence is what's going to help get us there. But before you start thinking about all the insights you can get from that data, it's really important to know that the data going in is also accurate as well. So obviously, Intel being a hardware company, in addition to a data company, we're looking at how do we start making those data collection systems a lot more accurate. The other big area is the fan experience, and there's a lot of diversity within the fan experience. If you think of the face of the fan, sure, maybe when you're actually at the game itself, everyone kind of looks the same because you're all in the same color and you're all cheering for the same team. But when you look at where the fans actually live and where they reside, you're finding people from all over the world cheering for the same team. I think European football is a perfect example of that, where you've got fans all over the world, all with different interests. And so it's really important when you think of that fan is you have to think of them as each individual people. And the way that we're looking at it for this is this idea of personalization. So it's customized content just for you. When you've got a lot of people who are starting to grow up with, having that second device or actually using it primarily, that's the only way they know how to watch the game. You're seeing what's happening with games being streamed on Twitter or the snackable content that you can get from like a Snapchat. It's really important to think of all the different aspects of how you can touch a fan and get them to watch the game the way they want to watch it. Maybe somebody's not going to sit down for the whole entire game and they want to be able to just see a couple highlights of what interests them for the game. Or what if you missed the first 20 minutes of a game? Wouldn't it be great if you could just quickly start to get the few highlights of what happened so you're caught up as soon as you jump into the game? So we're really starting to look at how do you start to personalize and individualize content for this. And as a result, all this data that you're starting to learn more and more about people is making it easier for this type of world to exist today. Another really interesting area is obviously on the hiring side. So when you think about diversity, I think a lot of times, and I actually asked a few people before I came up here, and I said, I'm doing a talk on diversity, and then somebody was like, oh, is that just about getting women into the workplace? And honestly, it's not just about gender or about the color of your skin. It's really about how you think about what industries you're starting to approach to bring people into your organization, what their backgrounds are, what they studied in college, what industry they came from. All of this is really, really going to help build a very, very successful team. The reason why I have this Hack MCFC hashtag up here is, Manchester City did a really, really interesting they took a really interesting approach on how they looked at data. You're starting to collect so much data, but after a while, you don't really know what to do with it. And if you're not trained to understand what to do with that data, it could be effectively useless for you. So what they did is instead of trying to figure it out on their own, they had a hackathon. And they gave out all their data and invited all these super fans to come out and tell them what to do with the data. And as a result, they got really good insights from it, and they actually hired their data person that way too. So it's a really interesting way to approach it. There's no one-size-fits-all model for all of this, but it requires you to think more open-mindedly about how you do things. And then just to show you, how Intel is approaching, and there's a few of these people in the room right here on this slide. Diversity is really, really important at Intel. As you can see, this is a flavor of our sports team. We've got a lot more people on the team than just up here in the slide. But we come from many different industries. We come from different countries. We come from different backgrounds. So we're not all engineers at Intel. You've got people who are on the they're in the Bachelor of Arts space. You've got people who are anthropologists at Intel thinking about approaching problems differently than how an engineer would approach problems. You've got people on this slide who've been at Intel for 12 years, which is me. I'm the dinosaur of the group, I like to joke. And you have people who just joined Intel a month ago, right? So we're starting to build this team, and it's really helping us to tackle problems in a different way because we're coming from different approaches. We challenge each other really well, and we learn from each other as well. And to kind of finish, as a result of all this, the whole idea is about winning at the end of the day. And the goal with what Intel wants to do is to help teams, help athletes, help fans win. And we feel together, that's what's going to make a successful, diverse sports world. Thanks. And I guess I'm supposed to take questions. Yes?
So, when you have a more diverse team working together and having a common culture, so how do you tackle that now in
How do you have a common culture with Intel? So at Intel, we've got our key values. And we make sure that when you start the company, you're pretty much trained on what these key values is. One of them, for example, is great place to work, or another one could be risk-taking. So you start to, the minute that you're into the company, you start to really embrace those, and you start to have those common threads amongst the different cultures. And it also requires you to be open-minded, too, when dealing with others. As a result of working with so many different countries at Intel, you really start to you learned how to listen more and understand where the other person is coming from, and you have to really focus on empathy in that sense.
Where did the growth of the Intel Sports Group kind of come from? Was it kind of a side project, people were interested in sports, and you guys originated with like white papers and stuff? How did the business case arise for you guys to start coming into this arena?
So Intel is a 50-year-old company, and in order to be as successful as we have been, we've kind of had to reinvent ourselves a few times along the way. So we're on that path of reinvention right now, and one of the we're effectively a data company now. We're no longer just a PC chip CPU company, and that whole idea of being a data company is we're viewing it as we're creating this virtuous cycle. So you've got all these devices and these things that are connected, but then it's also all the data that you're getting, and you're putting it in the back-end cloud, and you're starting to derive analytics. And so as a result, they're kind of just feeding each other. And we're starting to approach our business models through that virtuous cycle. And we looked at sports as one of the best industries to really start embracing our new business model. So like sports and autonomous vehicles and the retail space, these are areas where you're starting to see us take that new business model and apply it specifically for an industry. We've done a few acquisitions. So part of our Intel Sports Group, some of the assets that we have were through acquisitions. Like we acquired that company 3D Replay, which in case you caught the Super Bowl, you can see a play from all the different angles. Or from a VR perspective, we acquired a company called Vogue to stream VR content live. But you can't just go acquire the world, obviously, if you're going to be successful in this space. So it's really, really important to have those partnerships, and they're not just software. I mean, they're companies like New Balance, we have a partnership with them, right? That's not somebody we would traditionally say that we're going to have a partnership with. We're looking for people who can complement with their expertise in the space.
Do you have different strategies for, say, you mentioned retail versus sports versus others? Well, sports is at a different stage in a kind of an analytics process, whereas retail is starting way, way earlier. Do you have different strategies, and do you have different groups within this sports team to handle different aspects?
So the way the sports group is broken out is we're focused, we were kind of split up into two. You've got the fan engagement aspect, and then you've got the performance. But obviously both of those, the technologies that get created can kind of help on both sides of the house. We've got a team that's dedicated to retail, and we've got a team that's dedicated to autonomous vehicles. At the end of the day, what makes Intel successful, though, is their ability to scale. So there's always some common core foundation that has to remain the same. But it's about taking that core and then kind of customizing it for each industry.
Seems pretty exciting, kind of a new startup within Intel. Where do you see yourself like 3 to 5 years from, and how you
We want to see this become a billion-dollar industry, right? So we want to, 3 to 5 years from now, we would love to be coming here and talking about how this vision of the digitization of sport has come to life. One of the things that's amazing about getting to be at Intel and working at Intel is that we don't, we're not, SAP is not a competitor at all, right? We have joint sales teams that go together and sell solutions together. Intel is an enabling technology, so we always go to market with another brand, right? So whether in the PC world, we go to market with HP or Dell or Lenovo. When you think about, in SAP, we're inside of SAP, right? So, yeah, that's why it's great. We can often create these ecosystems. Yes.
Do you think these performance technologies are going to be consumer ready in the next couple of years? In terms of sort of bespoke type or customized solutions for individuals for humans?
Yes. Short answer. Long answer, you should go over to the booth and check out some of the stuff that we have, and it'll actually, you'll see some of that stuff coming to life. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, guys.